Welcome to the Digestive System Review. Now, just as a reminder, I know everything in life, it seems like we're trying to hurry to get from one end to the other as quickly as possible. However, this is not the case. This is where we want to make sure we are intaking what we need for our body, the nutrients and minerals, and digesting them properly so that way our body can function as it's meant to. In order for us to digest the food that we chose to nourish our body, we first must incorporate our senses. Our eyes to see, our nose to smell, our ears to hear, and our taste, touch. And a lot of these will get our salivation going, which will help us break down the food. All right, what do these pictures do for you? Chances are you might really get interested in the food and it makes you salivate just by looking at it. Or if you're thinking about hearing it, like the sizzling fajitas, or smelling those nice chocolate chip cookies coming from your oven, you're going to get your senses going. And those are part of the actual breakdown of your food to digest as well. All right, now that you've all come back to your senses, just kidding, let's get down to this digestion process. First, we need to learn about the alimentary canal organs, better known as the GI tract. This is a 35-foot one-way tube that runs from the mouth to the anus in efforts to nourish the body. The ingestion process, when a substance enters the digestive system via the mouth or oral cavity. Now, in our mouth is our mechanical digestion, which includes our teeth as well as our tongue. When we take a bite of food and close our oral cavity together with the chewing mechanism and our saliva, which is part of our chemical digestion, we are able to chew it into a form called a bolus. Our saliva has a digestive enzyme in it that helps break down potatoes, wheat, rice, maize, and other starches. This digestive enzyme is called amylase. Once mastication, or the chewing process that creates the bolus, as well as other chemical and mechanical breakdown has occurred in the mouth, it then begins to move food into the pharynx. Just as a reminder, percussion is a voluntary process of swallowing and the involuntary process of peristalsis that moves food through the digestive tract. The pharynx propels the food, or the bolus in this case, from the oral cavity to the esophagus. Once it reaches the esophagus, it is greeted by the upper esophageal sphincter. The esophagus then propels the bolus through to the stomach using peristalsis, which is an involuntary constriction and relaxation of the muscles of the intestine in order to create a wave-like movement that push the bolus to the next region. Once the bolus has reached the stomach, it's greeted by the LES, or lower esophageal sphincter, which is a valve that is located between the esophagus and the stomach to help keep the contents in the stomach. Now let's go over the muscularis externa layers, the longitudinal, circular, and oblique. The longitudinal layer is a thick outermost layer of smooth muscle of the stomach wall. It runs parallel to the stomach's longitudinal axis, and contractions of this layer help move food toward the pylorus. Second is the circular layer, which runs perpendicular to the stomach's longitudinal axis, forms a pyloric sphincter, which controls the flow of food from the stomach. The third layer is the oblique layer. It's the inner layer and responsible for churning food and mechanical digestion. The mucosa is a membrane lining the inner surface of the stomach with thick mucus secreted by columnar, epithelial, and glandular cells. The lesser curvature forms that shorter concave medial surface of the stomach. The pyloric sphincter is a strong ring of smooth muscle at the end of the pyloric canal, which lets food pass from the stomach to the duodenum. The duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, which starts at the pyloric sphincter and ends at the duodenum. The pylorus is the lower funnel-shaped part of the stomach that is continuous with the duodenum. The rugae of mucosa are the ridges and folds of the stomach's mucosal and submucosal layers that are most visible when the stomach is empty. The pyloric canal is the narrow, more inferior part of the pylorus. The greater curvature, it forms the long, convex lateral border of the stomach. The serosa is the outermost layer of the alimentary canal wall present in regions within the abdominal cavity. The fundus is the dome-shaped region of the stomach above and to the left of the cardia. The cardia is the part of the stomach that's closest to the esophagus and where food and liquids enter the stomach. Now that we've reviewed the structure of the stomach, let's go over the next macronutrient that is broken down mostly in the stomach, which is protein. The digestive enzyme that breaks down protein in the stomach is pepsin. It breaks down poultry, nuts, seeds, beans, eggs, meat, dairy, seafood, and other proteins. Once the chemical and mechanical digestion process continues in the stomach, it turns that bolus into a new form called chyme, which is a soupy liquid created with the food mixed with the digestive juices. It then is able to pass through the pyloric sphincter in the duodenum and enter the small intestine. And this first section is where the majority of the absorption actually happens. This is also where healthy fats break down with a digestive enzyme lipase, such as avocados, nuts, salmon, healthy oils, seeds, olives, and other healthy fats. The small intestine is broken down into three sections: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum, where you can clearly see the ileum is the larger section of the small intestine. The breakdown of the small intestine includes the outer layer of the serosa, the muscular ring, the mucosa, the villi, and the microflora. In a smaller breakdown there, you could see that the villus has a capillary bed, and that's exactly where all the nutrients are absorbed. Let's look at this a little bit more in detail. You'll still see the mucosa, submucosa. Let's look at this villi here, for instance. You'll see the arrows pointing in the direction of blood flow, and then you have the goblet and the epithelium. And here in a little bit more microscopic view, you'll also see the microvilli. In this picture, you'll see the small intestine surrounded by the large intestine, almost as if it's a picture frame. Mechanical digestion happens in the large intestine when the chyme goes from the ileum to the cecum through the ileocecal sphincter. The most important job the large intestine has is to absorb water. Now let's go over the components that make up the large intestine. First, we have the appendix. It is approximately 3 inches in length, and it contains a lymphoid tissue that helps with immunologic function. The cecum is the pouch that forms the beginning of the large intestine. Then the ascending colon to the right colic fixture to the transverse colon, and then the left colic fixture to the descending colon before we get to the sphygmoid colon and then to the rectum, or also known as the anal canal. Excretion, the removal of waste products through defecation. Though our food has made it from our mouth to our anus, thus concluding the digestion process, it is not fully concluded until we see the end results. Through a Bristol stool chart, we're able to evaluate what we have eliminated, thus understanding if our body is able to absorb the nutrients we have put in it or not. Your stool can be broken down into 7 different levels of stool. Let's go over them each now. Not only do you take into consideration the texture of the stool, but you also want to take into consideration the color. The first one is separate, hard lumps, hard to pass, constipated, nuggets, pebbles, or rabbit droppings. The second on our chart is sausage-shaped but lumpy, somewhat difficult to pass, or a bunch of grapes. The third on the chart is still a sausage shape, however it has cracks on the surface. It's a near perfect poop and kind of resembles corn on the cob. Our fourth one on the chart is still sausage-like, snake, banana, smooth, soft, or nut butter consistency. Fifth on the chart will be soft blocks with clear cut edges, easily passing, or chicken nuggets. Sixth on the chart are fluffy pieces with ragged edges, mushy with ragged edges, or mushy stool or porridge-like consistency. Definitely not from the Three Bears. And number 7, which is the last of our stool chart, is a watery, not solid pieces, liquidy or gravy-like consistency. Now, if we review the chart, you have the number 1 where it's kind of harder to pass, and you gradually get a little bit easier to pass until at the end of the chart, it is extremely easy to pass because it's too liquidy. When you're at the lower numbers of the chart, it's because your body is absorbing too much water or you're not taking in enough hydration in order to make the stools pass easily. On the opposite end, your body's not absorbing enough of the liquid that you're intaking, thus resulting in a loose stool. You want to be somewhere in the middle where there's a snake-like consistency. The color, on the other hand, could go anywhere from tan and grays, which you definitely don't want, to blacks, and sometimes different colors depending on the type of food dyes you're eating. In that case, especially if it's black, you want to reach out to your provider and consult with them.